Good evening, I'm Paul, and welcome to Insight-Nexus-News. Today is November 8th, 2024, and we're taking a deeper look at a chilling and lesser-discussed topic, the history and evolution of biological weapons. From early uses in warfare to documented cases where governments have tested biological agents on their own unsuspecting citizens, the story of biological weapons is as much about scientific progress as it is about ethical boundaries, power, and the profound impacts on civilian populations. Stay with us as we unravel a dark chapter in global history, exploring documented incidents, their legacies, and the ongoing ethical implications. And before we begin, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share if you find our reports meaningful. Early uses of biological agents. Biological warfare is far from a modern invention. Ancient historians recorded instances of poison-tipped arrows and the contamination of water supplies with animal carcasses to spread disease among enemy ranks. But perhaps one of the earliest documented cases of biological warfare involved smallpox against Native Americans during the 18th century. During the 1763 Pontiac Rebellion, British forces reportedly provided blankets contaminated with smallpox to Native American tribes as part of a deliberate effort to weaken them. Although the exact scale and full consequences of this event remain debated, the intent to spread disease among Native American populations is widely acknowledged. Biological warfare in the 20th century. The World Wars marked a turning point leading to the rapid development of biological and chemical weapons. During World War I, Germany attempted to infect Allied forces' horses and livestock with anthrax, though the technology was still in its infancy. By the time of World War II, however, more sophisticated biological warfare programs were emerging globally. One of the most infamous biological weapons programs was conducted by Unit 731 in Japan. This secret unit conducted horrific experiments on prisoners of war, primarily Chinese civilians and captured soldiers. Prisoners were deliberately infected with pathogens like the plague and anthrax, and the results were studied in detail. The experiments conducted under Unit 731's authority were extremely brutal, leading to hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths, and left a legacy of trauma and distrust among affected populations. Post-World War II developments. The end of World War II didn't halt the interest in biological weapons. Instead, it amplified it. As the Cold War developed, both the United States and the Soviet Union launched massive research and development programs in biological warfare. The potential for using pathogens as a covert means to cripple a nation became a compelling, if chilling, concept. The U.S. biological weapons program officially began in 1943 at Fort Detrick in Maryland, and soon expanded into a vast enterprise with testing sites, laboratories, and storage facilities nationwide. The focus was not only on offensive capabilities, but also on developing antidotes and countermeasures. Although the U.S. claimed it never deployed biological weapons, documented tests were carried out, sometimes on unsuspecting citizens. Testing on civilian populations. Several incidents highlight the ethical challenges that arose as government agencies sought to understand the potential effects of biological agents. For instance, in the 1950s and 60s, the CIA conducted tests in major cities across the U.S. to study the dispersion of biological agents. The notorious 1950 San Francisco experiment involved the release of Serratia marcescens, a bacterium, into the city's air. Though officials claimed it was harmless, at least one person died from infection, and a spike in pneumonia-like cases was reported. Similar incidents occurred elsewhere, as in New York City's subway system, where simulated biological attacks were staged to observe how bacterial spores would spread through a crowded, enclosed urban environment. The CIA also conducted Operation Big Itch and Operation Big Buzz, releasing infected mosquitoes on populations to study the dispersal and bite rates of mosquitoes as potential vectors for diseases like malaria and yellow fever. The case of smallpox, an infamous episode. While the release of biological agents on civilians was often claimed to be simulated or low risk, the ethical implications were profound. In 1971, the Soviet Union's smallpox bioweapons program led to an accidental release in the city of Aralsk. A researcher became infected and unknowingly spread the virus within the city. The outbreak was contained, but not before several deaths occurred. This incident remained hidden from the public for years, showcasing how biological research could pose immense dangers. Modern times and emerging threats. With advances in biotechnology, the nature of biological warfare has shifted from crude methods to more precise genetic engineering capabilities. Pathogens can now potentially be modified for higher virulence, resistance to treatment, and even targeted to specific populations. Recent debates about gain-of-function research, experiments in which scientists enhance the abilities of pathogens to understand their behavior better, have sparked widespread concern. In 2021, the discussion around laboratory origins of COVID-19 intensified this scrutiny, highlighting the thin line between research for prevention and potential weaponization. Data collection, surveillance, and ethical concerns. The 21st century has also seen a surge in biosurveillance as a counter-biowarfare measure. For instance, data from large-scale genetic databases could theoretically be exploited to create bioweapons targeting individuals with specific genetic markers. Ethical questions are intensifying as to how collected biological data is stored, used, and protected. Governments and companies alike now face public concern about the dual-use potential of genetic data. The 1972 Biological Weapons Convention. The Biological Weapons Convention, BWC, was established in 1972 to curb the spread and use of biological weapons. The treaty, signed by over 180 countries, prohibits the development, production, and stockpiling of biological and toxin weapons. While the BWC marked a significant step toward international regulation, challenges remain. Some countries are suspected of maintaining covert programs, exploiting loopholes, or conducting biological research under the guise of defensive development. Contemporary examples and emerging technologies. Today, biological research is at a critical juncture. On one hand, technologies like CRISPR and synthetic biology could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, and environmental science. On the other, they introduce possibilities for creating designer pathogens or manipulating viruses in ways never before imaginable. Advances in delivery methods like drones and aerosol dispersal systems have added a new dimension to the potential for biological warfare. Experts warn that future biological threats may not come from government labs alone, but from rogue actors or even sophisticated terrorist groups. The accessibility of genetic information and the availability of laboratory technology mean that the potential for homegrown biological threats is a very real possibility. Ethical and humanitarian considerations. The legacy of biological testing, especially where governments conducted experiments on unwitting civilians, has lasting psychological impacts on public trust. Whether examining the long-standing effects on Native American communities affected by smallpox blankets or residents of cities used as test sites during the Cold War, it's clear that the scars run deep. Conclusion. The history of biological weapons is a sobering reminder of both the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition and the ethical responsibilities that come with technological advancement. With ongoing discussions about laboratory safety, data privacy, and the ethical lines that governments should not cross, the question of how we handle biological threats in the future remains pressing. Thank you for joining us today on Insight-Nexus-News. As we've seen, the story of biological weapons spans centuries and raises questions that touch on ethics, power, and the future of humanity. As we continue to face new scientific challenges, it's more important than ever to remember the lessons of history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth reports. I'm Paul, and we'll see you next time on Insight-Nexus-News.